Hi, welcome everyone. Karol wrote me an email saying, I know you have a soft spot for this Audi A6 model. I actually recently recorded a test of the Audi A6 C9, where I said that for me, the ideal A6 is the C7 generation. I never really warmed up to the C8 because of a few details, and the C9 also isn't completely without flaws. But that's just the journalist's perspective after spending a week with the car. Today you could say it's a moment of truth because Karol has already driven this car for a while and he'll tell us what it's like to drive the A6 C8 hybrid version with more miles on it.
Hi, I'm Karol, currently based in Warsaw, although it was the Lublin region that brought me here to this meeting because Zakharov wrote asking if anyone from the Lublin region had something interesting to show, and that's where I'm from. So yes, today I'm in Warsaw, originally from the Lublin region. I have an Audi A6 C8 in the hybrid version, so I thought it might be an interesting car to talk about because there isn't much information about it on the internet. To find out anything, I had to drive, I had to search and dedicate a lot of time to learn something about this particular model in this version. Before, I used to drive an Opel Insignia. I knew I needed a big car. That was the time when Chinese cars started popping up in Poland, so I went to the JQ and Omoda dealerships. I immediately rejected the Omoda because it was too small. The JQ7 had a nice shape. I took it for a drive, but it just wasn't it. So I headed towards the other Chinese brand, which is BYD. And here the feelings were completely different. A bigger car, premium class, CLU DMI, that was the direction I was looking at. I took it for a drive, it made a good impression on me, but the gearbox was noisy like in a Toyota, and that was something I just couldn't stand. And I used the car mostly for long trips. I also checked Audi Select again because that was another criterion. If I were to buy a used car, it had to be from a dealer network, preferably from some kind of certified program, and that's how I found this particular car. It was at the upper limit of my budget, 180,000 with 34,000 kilometers on the clock at the time. It's a 2022 model. I went to see it, and even before I got inside, I had already bought it in my mind. So here we are today standing next to it, and I've already done 10,000 kilometers with this car, and I don't regret a single moment. Under the hood, at first glance, it looks like the well-known and popular 2-liter TFSI from Audi. But only those orange cables give away that there's something different here. We have the 50 TFSI version, which is a plug-in hybrid. In this version there are 265 horsepower, 350 Newton meters, paired with a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission, and between the combustion engine and the gearbox we have an electric motor with 143 horsepower, if I remember correctly, and also 350 Newton meters. The drivetrain's total combined output is 299 horsepower and 450 Newton meters. I actually still drive as a second car a Toyota Corolla hybrid. I was captivated by the driving characteristics of a hybrid car, meaning the smooth start from a stop, that initial pull like a tram, and the silence. It has to burn more fuel because here the car's curb weight is over 2 tons, almost 2,200 kilograms. And now, from the very beginning, since I've been driving it, or maybe even earlier, it had 34,000 kilometers when I bought it, and the fuel consumption from the very beginning, according to the computer, was 7.4 liters. Today I've driven it 10,000 kilometers. I reset all the data, reset the apps, and now I have 7.5 liters. My driving is 80% on the highway, mainly Lublin and Warsaw, and 20% is city driving in traffic jams here, where my previous Insignia could burn 13 liters, and that was a 2-liter diesel. And here's what's really important. I don't charge this car regularly. I live in an apartment building. I don't have an outlet. I don't have any charger nearby, so I could do it regularly. So I actually top it up when I visit the countryside, when I go with my family to my grandparents. That's when I charge it. Or when I'm shopping at the mall. I don't know, maybe an hour or an hour and a half, which isn't enough time to fully charge. When I was getting to know the car and how it drives, I was testing different options. We can force charging, we can hold the battery charge, we can force purely electric driving. And when I was learning it, for example, I sometimes charged it on the road. Economically, it doesn't make sense.
Everyone says that Poles love SUVs, but there has to be an asterisk and fine print here. Yes, but that's true of private buyers. That's when the Kia Sportage Yaris Cross or CHR reigns supreme. However, 69% of registrations in Poland are for companies, and the king of fleets is the Toyota Corolla, which is also the most common taxi in Poland, with almost 17,000 units. This isn't just a theory. These are statistics from the AutoDNA report summarizing the 2025 new car market. That's also where I found out that the car with the highest damage rate in their used car database is the BMW 5 Series. Do you know how many of these cars have a recorded damage in the AutoDNA database? 1 in 3, 1 in 2, more than 3/4. The link to AutoDNA is in the description. It's worth checking it out not just for interesting facts like these, but above all for reliable information about used cars before you buy them. Check the car's VIN in AutoDNA before buying and avoid a car that's been in an accident or one with a tampered odometer. Links in the description, check it out.
As for maintenance items, I haven't done anything yet. When I was buying the car, I negotiated that the guys at Audi would do an oil service for me before handing it over, so the oil was changed 10,000 kilometers ago. I've heard that the brake pads in these models last up to 100,000 kilometers because most of the braking is done through regenerative braking, and I think that's very likely. I plan to change the oil as recommended. According to the service book, the interval is actually a bit too long, so I haven't really made a decision yet. I've done 10,000 kilometers. So with a gasoline engine, I think it's safe to do oil changes every 15,000 kilometers. From what I found out, whether this car needs any special treatment, well, not really, and the manual doesn't mention anything about it either. Make sure to change the engine oil, make sure to change the transmission oil, and make sure to change the differential oil. And the timing system, yes, I'm actually the kind of user who takes care of things like that. As I mentioned, I handed over my previous Insignia ready to drive. I replaced everything that was possible, and I'll do the same in this case. I like screens, I like aluminum, so this is an interior that really speaks to me. I joke with my wife that this car has set the bar so high that we'll have a problem buying the next one. Like I just said, the direction we're going with too many screens is already a bit too much, and too many analog switches aren't really my style either, so this is a happy medium that's just perfect for me right now. And besides that, it's just a regular adjustment. A regular C8 except for one small change. Instead of seeing the engine temperature in the digital instrument cluster, we see the battery charge level. What definitely distinguishes this A6 version from the regular combustion engine version is definitely the trunk. Because even though we have quite a big car, the official trunk capacity here is just over 400 liters. Plus, if we want to use the charging option, there's always a bag that takes up a few liters. And that's something that A6 users with air suspension might also notice. A very high floor and no way to raise it. So these are the things we have to take into account with the hybrid version, because here we have the whole set of batteries that power the car.
And now, driving impressions, and I'll start with a very important question. Namely, whenever someone asks me, or if I don't have the option to charge a plug-in, but I still like the fuel consumption even with a depleted battery. Should I buy a plug-in? I always answer no, it doesn't make sense. Because you're carrying that battery with you, it takes up space in your trunk. It also makes the performance of this car, well, lower than it could be, of course. The powerful electric motor is also sized for the battery, which gives you power and so on. So, in general, you potentially have greater capabilities, but only potentially, because you don't use them. And I always say don't buy plug-ins because it doesn't make sense if you have no way to charge them. And you, fully aware, what's more, it wasn't a random purchase because you wanted the plug-in and you knew you wouldn't have a way to charge it regularly. But you bought it anyway, and 10,000 kilometers later. Are you happy?
I'm happy, and I would buy the same plug-in again today, at least this one. What's the deal with me specifically wanting a plug-in hybrid? I like what it's like to drive on electric power in the city. The fact that it's absolutely quiet, that we're driving, that there's no jerk at the start, that everything just happens smoothly.
So it wasn't about using less fuel, no, it wasn't about
Because you could...
buy a 2.0 diesel, right? And you would also have less.
Exactly, the point was to make it more comfortable. Also, I've been a diesel guy for a long time. I've driven diesels my whole life, and at some point I just started to appreciate the lack of vibrations, the quiet, and the different way it works. What I was most afraid of when switching from diesel was the lack of torque. And that's the thing that held me back until now, and every time I kept going back to diesel. Here, I honestly don't feel any turbo lag at all.
He didn't complain about the turbo lag.
Yes, exactly. And what else does this electric motor do? That it doesn't have that lag when you press the gas pedal at takeoff. Of course, all of this also depends on the mode we're driving in. I drive in comfort mode around the city because it smooths out all the bumps for me, since it has adjustable suspension here. Not air suspension, just adjustable. On the highway, I drive in individual mode where I set the suspension and steering characteristics to dynamic. I don't set the engine characteristics to dynamic because then it forces the car to run on the combustion engine all the time. So that's why I use the individual mode instead of the predefined dynamic mode. Conversations with Audi hybrid users, actually just in the dealerships, but let's say I trusted them, confirmed to me that this might make sense. That even with occasional charging it might make sense. And this isn't a hybrid that works like a Toyota hybrid. Here I have direct experience because I drove it myself. Toyota charges the batteries at every possible moment. Here, if we drive using the tachometer, which actually shows force instead of RPM, we can see that it reads the location from the GPS even if no address is entered in the navigation. If it sees a long straight stretch with no intersections or roundabouts, it doesn't do any regenerative braking at all. It just drives, and you can see that the needle doesn't go down to charge, it just stays flat on ready, and you can feel that it's coasting.
Because there's no point in recuperating just to use it again later, since there are always losses in every operation. So if we already have speed X and it's a straight road, why interfere? You have to let the car roll without resistance whenever possible.
Exactly, that's with the gas pedal. So here there isn't that much regenerative braking, but still it almost always starts with the electric motor. So yes, that was my conscious decision. It was probably also about fuel consumption to some extent. Like I said, here we have a 300 horsepower car. My fuel consumption over 10,000 kilometers is 7 to 7.5 liters. So I think that's a really decent result, especially since we have Quattro here.
Yes, that's the solution used by Audi or by Volkswagen too, like in the Touareg. Specifically, the electric motor is placed in front of the gearbox, so everything behind the gearbox remains unchanged.
Exactly.
This way, if the car had Quattro, it still has Quattro, and it's definitely a mechanical Quattro, even when driving purely on electricity.
Yes, you can feel that it sometimes disconnects, at least that's the impression I get, because I don't know if it's Ultra.
It is Ultra, yes.
Okay, but sometimes when I'm driving, I see on the fuel economy gauge at a constant speed that it drops from about 10 to an average of 6. So I don't know if that could be energy management. I mean,
that could rather be the effect of energy management and other factors, because Ultra does save, but not that much, because it doesn't create enough resistance for it to drop that much.
I mean, for me, it's also a bit of a motivator, because since I live in an apartment building, I have plans, maybe it's a dream, to build a house. And it's kind of to motivate me to make that decision to build that house so I can drive on electricity. Because if I'm at my in-laws and I have the possibility to charge and I drive, let's say, like that, well, like a typical European, according to studies, which is about 50 to 70 kilometers a day, I think this car is just perfect. I managed to drive 72 kilometers on electric power alone as a test, which is a really high value, although probably a bit unrealistic in regular driving, maybe an unrepeatable result like that. That's because it was a day when the temperature didn't require either heating or air conditioning in the vehicle. And it was a route on national roads at a very steady speed of around 70 to 90 kilometers an hour.
As for the smoothness of the ride, I can confirm this is a car that drives like an electric car, but it's not tuned so aggressively that the moment you touch the gas, it jumps forward. It has a smooth, fluid feel. This electric motor isn't that powerful on its own.
The second thing you can also feel is the moment when the combustion engine kicks in, because right now we're driving in EV mode, so by default it's running electrically. And now if you, for example, press down, you'll feel the moment when it
doesn't cross a certain threshold, yes.
And that's the thing, if we wanted to drive purely electrically, for purists, up to that point it will run on electricity, and only from that moment when we force it, because it's like this, it won't stubbornly stay in electric mode, but if there's really a need to accelerate, then even if you force the electric mode, it will kick in and use full power. What definitely needs to be acknowledged is the weight, which you can feel during more sudden braking, because as I said, it's over 2 tons. Yes.
Look, it's pretty empty here.
Yes?
Yeah, pretty empty. Oh, here the change will happen, so we'll have, look how the road has dried up, actually in just 10 minutes since our last drive. Yes, 50. The only thing is, right, the tires are slightly damp and they really messed up that sharp left maneuver for us, because for a moment they turned left, but they kept going straight, yes. You could hear them scraping the asphalt, so the car didn't throw itself to the left as much as it really wanted to, and there's not much more to say about it. I mean, it's obvious. What we know for sure is that it doesn't lean.
Yes.
That in sport mode, at least in dynamic, it handled really well, as much as the tires allowed, and it didn't lean at all, and we didn't surprise the electronics at all. There was no electronics intervention.
I was also expecting some kind of reaction. No, nothing.
Nothing, just calmly. Here we can maybe do a repeat. Here we'll just drive past you with the shell, just so it's clear.
Don't be scared.
Don't scare anyone, and here again the speed limit is 50 again. Oh, now it's dry. Yeah, a little stronger now. Now it's got a bit more grip on the asphalt. It leaned a bit more gently because there was also that change of direction. Yes.
And it was noticeable?
And at this point you can see that in every version, even in the sportier one, it's still a family wagon.
A wagon, what else encourages this kind of slow driving, and it kind of fits with what I was saying. There are laminated front side windows, there's an acoustic thermal windshield at the front, so the silence here is really all-encompassing. And no, this car doesn't encourage, let's call it sporty driving. When I was still doing test drives, I took a regular 40-45 TFSI for comparison with this one, so I know that's a point of reference. It was like getting into a tractor, even though it's a gasoline engine that runs smoothly, right? Now we're sitting here and we actually have complete silence, right? Yes, absolutely nothing is happening. If I had to look for shortcomings, what I'm missing is the audio. Here we have the Audi sound system, so there's no branded audio from Bang & Olufsen here. I kind of miss that. And there's no panoramic roof. That's something I kind of wanted to have. I've never had it, but here my son wanted it, but unfortunately it didn't work out. Other than that, it pretty much has everything I need.
What would you say to someone who's wondering whether a plug-in is a good idea or not?
It's definitely not a car for everyone. As you mentioned, we're always carrying around those 300 to 400 kilograms of batteries. I definitely recommend it to people who would like to, or are maybe thinking about switching to electrification but aren't sure yet or aren't ready for some reason, who aren't counting every penny spent on the car because they can afford potential repairs. Because here, really, from the conversations I've had, if something happens, then it starts at around 20 to 25,000 when it comes to things related to the electric drive. So that's definitely something you need to keep in mind. That's why I was only looking at Audi Select cars.
Right, since you have extra warranty.
In that sense. I have a 1-year warranty, yes. This car is actually from the German market, imported to Poland. And then we have a 1-year warranty, which is kind of an extra warranty given by Audi, not the standard dealer warranty, because cars bought from Audi in Poland have a 5-year warranty, so it's a bit different. So, well, I'm aware of that. Experience has taught me that if something happens to my car, it usually happens in the first year of owning it. So I expect that if something is going to happen, it will happen then. Yes, exactly.
Well, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that nothing goes wrong with the car. So you don't have to bear those huge costs. Have a pleasant ride, and I hope you can build a place to plug it in as soon as possible. Yes.
With some extra motivation? Thanks.
Thank you all as well for watching this episode. Don't forget to subscribe and see you in future videos. Bye.